Hey guys, hi, hello. You're gonna watch Napoleon Hill, The Master Key to Riches, Chapter 4, Definiteness of Purpose. After a good night's sleep, the audience returned to their seats in the great hall. Several looked tired. They had spent the night reviewing their notes from the day's session. Some reflected on the lives they had led and whatever or not they had followed any of these principles. Others smiled knowingly, realizing that many of the successes they had already attained could be attributed to some of these practices the speaker had mentioned. Most were intrigued and gratified by what they had already learned. The seminar had been nothing like they had imagined, and they felt fortunate to have attended it. At precisely at 9, the speaker entered the hall from backstage. He radiated calm and confident. He was wearing a portable microphone and walked down to the steps of the stage, and so that he was standing directly in front of the audience. He cleared his throat and began to speak once more. It is impressive to recognize that all of the great leaders in all walks of life and during all periods of history have attained their leadership by application of their abilities behind a definite purpose of major purpose. It is no less impressive to observe that those who are classified as failures have no such purposes, but they go around and around like a ship without a rudder, coming back away empty-handed. To their starting point, some of the failures begin with a definite major purpose, but they desert their purpose of the mountain movement of they had overtaken by the temporary defeat of the tremendous opposition. They give up quite, not knowing that their philosophy of success is dependable and definite as rules of mathematics, and never suspicions of the temporary defeat is but a testing ground which may prove a blessing in disguise if it is not accepted as final. It is one of the great tragedies of civilization that 98 out of every 100% go all way through life without coming within a sign of anything that even approximates definiteness of a major purpose. And Andrew Carnegie recognized of this tragedy that impressed him to influence some 500 great American leaders of industries to collaborate in the organization of this philosophy of individual achievement. Mr. Andrew first test, which he applied to all of his associate workers who have undergone for promotions to supervisory promotion, was the determination to whatever extent they were willing to extra mile. His second test was to determine whether or not they had their minds fixed upon a definite goal, including the necessary preparation for attainment of the goal. When I asked Mr. Carnegie for my first promotion, said Mr. Charles M. Schwab, one of his employees, he grinned broadly and replied, "If you have heart fixed on what you want, there is nothing I can do stop you from getting it." Mr. Schwab knew that he wanted it. It was the biggest job within Carnegie's control, and Mr. Carnegie helped him to get it. One of the strange facts concerning those who move with definiteness of purpose is the readiness with which the world steps aside the name may pass, even coming to their aid in carrying out their aims. How Andrew Carnegie found the perfect employee is the story behind this philosophy is dramatic and demonstrates the importance of Andrew Carnegie placed upon definiteness of purpose. He had developed his great steel industry and accumulated a huge fortune of money when he returned his interest to use of the disappointments of future or the fortune. Having recognized that the better portion of his riches considered the knowledge with that which he had accumulated them in his understanding of human relationship, his major aim in life became that inspiration someone to develop a philosophy that would convey this knowledge to all who might desire it. He was then well along in years and recognized that job called for the service of a young person who had the time to inclination to spend 20 years or more researching cause of individual achievement. After interviewing more than 250 possible associates whom he suspected might have such ability, by chance he met a young man who had been sent by a magazine to interview him the story of his achievement. Carnegie's insight into the human character helped him to recognize that this young man might have qualities for which he had long been searched, and so he set up an ingenious plan to test him. So he began by giving this young man the story of his achievements. Then he began to suggest him that the world needed a practical philosophy of individual achievement which would permit the humblest worker to accumulate riches in whatever about or the form the worker might desire. For 3 days and nights, he elaborated upon this idea, describing how one might go to the organization of such a philosophy when a story was finished. Mr. Kagi was ready to apply his test, determine whether or not he had found the person who could depend upon his work and idea throughout the completion. You know how many ideas of a philosophy or new philosophy, he said, and I wish you ask a question and connecting with it, which I wish you to answer in a simple yes or no. The question is this: if I give you an opportunity to develop the world's best philosophy of individual achievement and introduce you those who can and collaborate with you to develop it, do you wish the opportunity and will you follow through with its completion? The young man cleared his throat, stamped for a few seconds, then replied in a brief sentence that was designed and to provide him with an opportunity to project his influence for good throughout the world. Yes, he exclaimed, I will not only undertake this project, but I will finish it. This was the definite, and it was one thing Mr. Kagi was searching for: definiteness of purpose. Many years later, this young man learned that Mr. Kagi had held a stopwatch in his hands, and when he asked a question, and he had allowed exactly 60 seconds for an answer. If the answer had required more time, the opportunity would have been given to Withal. He answered had it actually required 29 seconds. Mr. Kagi explained the reason for timing him. It has been my experience, he said, that the person cannot reach the decision promptly only because of one's on the necessary fact for the decision at the hand and explained, and cannot be depended upon to carry through any decision and that person may make. I have also discovered these who decision promptly usually have the capacity to move with definiteness of purposes in other circumstances too. The first hurdle of Mr. Kagi test had been fully recovered with flying of colors, but there was still another that followed. Very well, said Kagi. You have one of the two important qualities that will be needed by a person who develops the philosophy I have described. Now I shall learn whether or not you have the second. If I give the opportunity to develop the philosophy, or you are willing to devote 20 years of your time to research the cause of success and failures without pay, earning your own living as you go along. The question shocked him, and he assumed that since he had been chosen by Mr. Kagi for so important job, he would be subsidized from Mr. Kagi's huge fortune. However, he recovered quickly from shock by asking Mr. Kagi why he was unwillingly to provide the money for so important an assignment. It was not unlimited of supply of money, Mr. Kagi replied, but it was desired to know if you have a natural capacity to go extra mile by rendering the services before trying to collect pay for it. Then he went to explain that the most successful people in all walks of life had always been those who have followed the habits of rendering more services than for which they have paid. He also called attention for the fact that subsidies for money, whether made to individuals or not groups of individuals, often do more injury than good. And he reminded the young man that he had been given an opportunity which been withheld from the more than 250 other people, some of whom were much older and experienced than he. He finished by saying, if you make the most of this opportunity I have offered you, it is conceivable that you may develop into a rich so fabulous in nature as to dwarf my material wealth by comparison, for the opportunity provides the way for you pretended and the nearest minds of the nation to profit by the experiences of your greatest American leader of industries, and might well enable you to project your influence for good through the civilized world, thereby enriching those who are not yet born. And so in Charles Schwab was hired. Mr. Kagi had found the person for whom he has been always long searching, and this people he received his first lesson on definiteness of purpose and willingness to go the extra mile. 20 years later, almost the day the philosophy which Mr. Kagi was designated as being the better portion of his riches was completed and presented to the world in the 8th-volume edition. And what of the man who spent 20 years of time without pay? Some ask. What compensation did he receive for his labor? A complete answer to his question would be impossible, for the man himself does not know the total value of benefits received. Moreover, some of the benefits are so flexible in nature that they will continue to aid him the remainder of his life. But for his satisfaction, of those who measure riches in material value alone, it can be stated that one book written by this man and the result of knowledge gained from this application and the principles are going to be extra mile has already yielded an estimated profit upward of $3 million. Actually, the time he spent writing the book was 4 weeks. Why these principles are so effective is the answer. Definiteness of purpose and the habit of going an extra mile constitute a force which saturates the imagination, even the most imagination of people, although these are but 2 of the 17 principles of individual achievement. I mentioned these 2 principles together for one purpose, that is, indicate how the principles of this philosophy are interconnected like the links of a chain, and how these combinations of principles lead to the development of stupendous power which cannot be attained by the application singly of any one of them. We will now analyze the power of definiteness of purpose and the psychological principles from which this power is derived. The first premise: the starting point of all individual achievement is an adoption of definite purpose and a definite plan for his attainment. The second premise: all achievement is the result of a motive or a combination of motives, of which there are 9 basic motives which govern all voluntary actions. So these motives have been previously described in chapter 2. And the third premise is any dominating idea, plan or purpose held in the mind through repetition of thoughts and emotionalized with a burning desire for its realization is taken over by the subconscious section of mind and acted upon it, and it is thus carried through to its logistic climate and by whatever natural means may be available. Fourth premises: and any domination, desire, plan or purpose held in the consciousness and mind and backed by absolute faith in its realization is taken over and acted upon immediately by the subconscious section of mind. There is no known record of this kind of desire having ever been without fulfillment. Fourth premise: the power of thought is the only thing over which any person has completed unquestionable control. A fact that for some might suggest the need for a close relationship between the mind and a man and infinite intelligence and linked together by faith. Sixth premise is the subconscious in the mind may be reached through which the faith and given instruction as through which it were a person or a complete entity up to itself. The seventh premise is a definite purpose, the backness by absolute faith in the form of wisdom, and a wisdom in action produces positive result. The major advantages of definiteness of purpose is like definiteness of purpose develops self-reliance, personal initiative, imagination, enthusiasm, self-discipline, and concentration of effort. All of these are prerequisites for the attainment of material success. It includes one to budget one's time and to plan all the day-to-day endeavors so they lead towards the attainment of one's major purpose in life. It makes one more alert in the recognition of opportunities related to the objects of one's major purpose, and it inspires it necessary to courage to act upon opportunities when they appear. So it inspires the cooperation of other people. It prepares the way to the full exercise of the state of mind known as faith. By making the mind positive and freezing it into them from the repetition of prayer and doubt and indecision, it provides one of the best major success consciousness without which no one may attain enduring success in any calling. It destroys the destructive habit of procrastination. Lastly, it leads directly to the development of the continuous maintenance of the first of the 12 riches, a positive mental attitude. These are the major characteristics of definiteness of purpose, although it may be any other qualities and usages, and it's directly related to each of the 12 riches of life because they are attainable only by singleness of purposes. Compare the principles of definiteness of purpose with the 12 riches once at a time or one at a time and observe how essential is for the attainment of each. Then take inventory of these people of outstanding achievements which this country has produced and observe how each of them has emphasized some major purpose of objective of his or her endeavor. Walt Disney mortgaged everything to bet on a cartoon mouse. Of Winfrey, who came from an impoverished childhood, relied on her talent to become America's #1 talk show hostess. Every Olympic athlete trained with a major purpose. Just think what amazing record achieved by Florence Griffith Joyner, Mary Lou Retton, Gray Longest, Bill Havens, and 7 gold medal winning swim champion Mark Spitz. This list might be multiplied until contain the name of every great American leader who has contributed to the establishment of the American way of life, which we know today and benefit by it. How to acquire a definite major purpose. The procedure and the development of a definite major purpose is simple but important. If you follow these steps, you will begin to reap the rewards of your effort. First, write out a complete, clear, and definite statement of these major purposes in life. Sign it and commit it to memory. Then repeat it orally at least once every day, and more often it is practicable. Repeat it over and over, thus practicing all of your faith in the infinite intelligence. Number two, write a clear, definite plan by which you intend to begin the attainment of the objective of your definite major purpose. In this plan, state the maximum time allowed in the attainment of all the purpose and describe precisely what you want intended to give in return for the realization of your purpose, remembering that there is no such thing in something of for nothing, and that everything has a price which must be paid in advance in one form or another. Make your plan flexible enough to permit changes at the any time of your inspired to do so, and remember that infinite intelligence which operates in every atoms of matters and in every living or inanimate thing and may present you with a plan for superior to any you can create. Therefore, be ready at all times to recognize and adopt any superior plan that may be presented to your mind. Is number 3. And number 4, keep your major purpose and your plans for attainment of strictly to yourself, except so far as you will receive additional instruction for carrying out your plan. And in description of the mastermind principle which follows, do not make the mistakes of assumption that because of you that may not understand these instructions, these principles have described or not sound. Follow the instruction to the letter, follow them in the good faith, and remember by doing so, you are duplicating the procedure of many of the greatest leaders this nation has ever produced. These instructions call for no effort that you may not easily put forth. They may need demands upon time or ability with which the average person may not complain. Decide now what you desire from life or what you know how to give in return. Decide whether you're going to do or how you are going to get it. Then make a start from where you now stand and make the start with when reach the attainment of your goals and that may be a hand. And where you will discover that extend or you make use of these other and better means will reveal themselves you. That has been experience of all those who the world has recognized as success. Most of them started with the humble beginnings with a little more to aid them than a passionate desire to attain a definite goal. There is enduring magic in such a desire. Soon you will learn about the principle which is the key to all great achievements, the principles which has been responsible for a great American way of life, a system for free enterprise, a riches and a freedom. But first you which makes you most that which are what you desire for the life. Ideas and the lead to success begins the definiteness of purpose. It is all well known fact that the ideas are only assets which have no fixed values. It is equal well known to the ideas of the beginning of all the achievements. Ideas from the foundation of fortunates and starting points from the all inventions and the inventions they have mastered, and the air above us, the water of the ocean around us, have enabled us hardness and the use of energy known as the ether, and through which one of the brain may communicate with another brain through telepathy. So the tape recorder has nothing but an abstract idea until Edison organized it through definiteness of purpose and submitted it to the subconscious portion of the brain, and where the projected into the great reservoir of infinite intelligence, from which the workable plan was flashed from the symptom, and which the workable plan he translated into a mission which worked. The philosophy of individual achievement began as an idea of mind of Andrew. He had backed his idea with the definiteness of purpose, and now the philosophy is available for the benefits of millions of people throughout the civilized world. Any idea that is held in the mind, emphasized, feasted, and feared or revenged begins at once of the cloth itself is the most convenient and the appropriate physical form that is available. That which mean a belief or talk about a fear or whether it good or bad was a very definite way of making its appearance in one form or another. So those who are struggling to free themselves from the limitations of poverty and misery must not forget this great truth, for it applies to an individual just as it does to a nation of a people. So self-suggestion or the link between the consciousness and the subconscious mind is there is a working principle through which thoughts and ideas, plans, hopes and purposes which are placed in the conscious mind finds the way into a subconsciousness section of the mind, where they are picked up the carried out to the logical conclusion throughout the law of nature, which I shall describe later. To recognize these principles of understanding is to recognize also the reason why definiteness of purpose is beginning of all achievement. You can transfer thoughts and the consciousness to the subconscious section of the mind more quickly by the simple process of setting up or stimulating the vibrations of thought through faith, fear, or any other highly intensified emotions, such as enthusiasm, a burning desire based on a definiteness of purpose. Thoughts backed by the faiths have pretended all other ones in the matter of definiteness and speed with which they have handed it to the subconscious sections of mind and are acted upon. The speed with the mind, the power of faith works, has given rise to the belief held by the many of other certain phenomenon, a result of miracles. Psychologists and scientists recognize so much that phenomenon as miracle, claiming that everything that happens is the result of definite cause, albeit a cause which cannot be explained. Be that as it may, a known fact, the person who are capable of freezing his mind and from all the self-imposition limitations through the mental attitude, no of faith general, finds the solution to all of his life problem, regardless of their nature. Psychologists recognize also the infinite intelligence, while it not claimed automatically solve riddles, nevertheless carry out any other clear definite ideas to a logical conclusion, aims or purpose or desire that is submitted to the subconscious sections of the mind and a mental attitude to a perfect faith. However, infinite intelligence never attempts to modify, change, or otherwise alter any thoughts that is submitted to it, and it has never been known to act upon a more wish or an indefinite idea through or purpose. This truth, well grounded in your mind, will give you sufficient power to solve your daily problems with much less effort than most people devote to worrying over their problem. So-called hunches often the signals of indicates that infinite intelligence is endeavoring to reach and influence the conscious sections of mind. But you will observe that they usually come in responses to some ideas, plans, purposes, or desire, or some fear that has been handled over the subconscious sections of the mind. So all hunches should be treated civilly and examined carefully, as they have often convened they either in the whole world or part of information to the utmost of the daily or these hunches. So days or weeks or after thoughts which inspire them has reached the reservoirs of infinite intelligence. Meanwhile, the individual often has forgotten the original thought which they inspired them. This is a deep, profound subject on which even the wisest of men knows very little. It becomes a self-revealing subject only upon meditating on thoughts. If you understand the principles of mind operating I have described, you will have the clues as which why meditation or sometimes become that which one desires, while at another time is bring and which one does not wish. This type of mental attitude is attained only by preparation of self-discipline. We will learn how to develop this mental attitude later in the seminar. It is one of the most profound truths of the world that the affairs of all the people, whether they were circumstance or the mass throughout the individual thoughts, shape themselves to fit exact pattern of the thoughts. And those who are successful become successful only because they acquire the habits of thinking in terms of successes. Definiteness of purpose can and it should completely occupy the mind, and that has no time or space in the mind for thoughts of failure. Another profound truth consists in the fact that the individual who has been defeated and who has recognized himself as a failure may be revising the position of the sails of his mind. So convert the wind of adversity into the power of equal volume, which will carry him onward to the success. As one poet said, one ship sails east and one other west, the imply by the sail same blow. It's the set of the sail and not the gales, the bird them where to go. So to some who pride themselves on being what the world calls cool-headed and practical, this analysis of the principal definiteness of purpose may appear to be abstract or impractical. There is a power of greatness than the power of conscious thoughts, and often it is not perceptible for to the fortune mind. Acceptance of this truth and is the essential for the successful culmination of any definite purpose based upon the desire of the great achievement. Every circumstances of everyone's life is the result of the definite cause, whether it is circumstance that brings failure or one of the brings success, and many of the circumstances of everyone's life are the result of the cause over which the person has or may have control. This obvious truth gives importance to the first magnitude to the principles of definiteness of purpose. If the circumstances of people's lives are not what they desire, those circumstances may be changing, and by changing their mental attitude and formation of a new and more desirable thoughts and habits too. And thus in this audio session, and you have still more topics in chapter 4, like more interesting, like how definiteness of purpose lead to success, and Mata for multiple success, and 2 million is not less than, and how I discover my own personal power, or how to find your definite major purpose in life, or and so on, like how you harness your own personal power, and so more interesting topics which you see in the next audio session. So thus end this video session, and see you soon in next chapter.